Sweden, and we're now going to go to the Base Group Ireland, Louis Macaulay and Richard Fortune. Base Ireland Biodiversity, Agriculture, Soil and Environment is part of an international community of farmers, agronomists and agriculture professionals who are committed to advancing the knowledge and practice of conservation agriculture. And their primary objective is the development of sustainable, farmer-led and profitable farming practice. So have a look at this video, and then afterwards Louis and Richard are going to be live for discussions and comments and questions.
You're very welcome to Wexford. It's the south of the country here. We're on the farm of Richard Fortune. And Richard, you're a beef and tillage farmer. And just going to talk, I suppose, about your transition towards a biological farming system.
Yep. Okay. So, I suppose we're farming about 114 suckler cows here. I think we calved this year. All pedigree Solaire. We cross about half of them with a Charolais bull. All the Charolais crosses go for beef, and we'd sell about maybe half a dozen pedigree bulls, and we'd sell some pedigree Solaire heifers for replacements for other farmers, what we don't use ourselves. And then the cereals we grow then are just for our own use, for feeding our own feed. Yeah. So.
And why did you move, we'll say, towards maybe a biological agriculture or regenerative agriculture model?
Well, I suppose it started off, I got interested in using clover to reduce nitrogen. And in it's about 10 years ago then I came across an article that was on about an organic farmer who was using red clover for silage. So I gave that a go, and we tried that, and that worked fairly well for us. So we were going along at that, and then we bought a worn out, about 70 acres of it was in tillage for years, and it was fairly well worn out, and it was very sandy land. And we were finding grass was struggling in that during the summer especially, so we were looking to help try and build the land up, like. And so I did a bit of research anyway, and I came across Cotswold Seeds website, and they were talking about using herbal lays and more deeper rooting grasses and stuff compared to just ryegrass, which we were only using before.
For drought situations.
For drought and to help build the soil.
Okay, yeah.
And from their website, I came across, they referenced Robert Elliott's book, The Clifton Park Farming System. So I bought that and read it, and found it really interesting, like that it was sort of almost the system we were trying to use. He was using about his deep rooting lays for about 4 or 5 years, and then using maybe 4 or 5 years then of crops, which suited that sort of what we were trying to do over there. And then when I went looking to get some more diverse species grass, got talking to a seed salesman, and he suggested that along with doing that I should use cover crops between the cereal crops.
Okay,
to help further build the land. So when I went researching that then on the internet, I came across one of Gabe Brown's talks and watched that, and just opened my eyes to what was going on in the soil, and it made a lot of sense to me compared to normal, a more conventional farming system. It just, about, we'll say, the soil food web and root exudates, things I'd never heard of.
Yeah.
But just made sense.
Yes.
It was a logic, like, and even going back to the Clifton Park book, he was doing the same thing. He just didn't understand what was going on.
It's funny you say that. We were doing a course earlier this year, and one of the vegetable growers, the organic vegetable growers, said the exact same thing. Yeah. We were doing this, but we didn't necessarily know why we were doing this, but it did work. Yeah. And so it is that learning curve all the time, isn't it? Well, that was it. It was just piece by piece, by bit along. You, as I said, you went further and further down the rabbit hole. Yes. The more you learned, the deeper you went. And how did that, particularly on that 70 acres that you said was very badly degraded, how did it work on that? It worked well. We used to get very good cover crop or good crops, we'll say, when we came out of the lays. Yes. Out of the red clover lays and stuff like that now. Look, it still has a way to go, and to get really good. And it's really only in the last maybe 3 years that I've really started to understand what I'm
what I should be doing,
Okay.
and and trying to make more changes and go a bit further.
And in terms of your tillage, is it all summer crops or spring tillage?
Mostly, yeah.
So yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
And so, what cover crops would you have been putting with those?
Various now. I suppose maybe about 3-4 years. I'm playing with cover crops. Sure, look, your usual vetches and Facelia and that sort of thing. After the drought in 2018,
yeah.
basically I whole cropped all the cereals for forage.
Okay.
And went in with Westerwolds. So that was the cover crop for that year, I would say.
But I hear it's actually quite a good one.
Yeah, it had the soil in good condition after it now, yeah. It worked well enough.
And so, in terms of, we'll say, where you're going to go in the future, or where do you see yourself with this whole system? Is it get more into this area, is it?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. I've seriously reduced my nitrogen this year in particular. I've cut back by about about a third.
Okay.
About a third less than last year. Using more ground into we'll say into clover fields and into multi-species swards, and where I don't need as much or any nitrogen, and using more foliar nitrogen.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend that's starting to happen, particularly I think within organisations like BASE, that the idea of foliar feed seems to be, for all different types of sprays, it seems to be gathering a bit of momentum. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I suppose last year I did a bit of an experiment with comparing foliar nitrogen to granular nitrogen. Now, not completely foliar, we'll say. It got the same in the seed bed, but then after that, we'll say half of the field got foliar and half got granular, and I suppose only about half of the amount foliar-wise, and there wasn't a significant difference in it. Slightly less, yes, but yield-wise,
yes,
but not very significant.
And that's a trend I see now, that a lot of farmers maybe that are looking at this from a biological perspective, as a consequence, are looking at it from a low input or a reduced input system. So you're not necessarily always chasing yield, because you're being more cognizant of what the input costs are.
Yeah, that's it.
You can get maybe a better balance sometimes.
Yeah, like I've grown a lot of the spring barley here this year was grown with no fungicides, or I haven't spread an insecticide, I'd say, in about 3 years. But I did a good bit of the spring barley this year with no fungicides, and even the oats and stuff only really ever got one fungicide. And we'll say, I did one field very well, did a lot of foliar nutrition on it, and it yielded about 3 tonne now, which would be good enough going. Maybe it could have done a bit better with a full program, but it only cost me €140 an acre in inputs, compared to maybe 250 for a conventional system.
Yes. And then, in terms of integrating livestock, are the two enterprises almost completely separate on the farm, or are they?
No, they're very integrated. As I said, the growing the grain is to feed the cattle. What we sell is cattle. We don't sell grain.
Yeah. And do the cattle graze post harvesting on the fields at any level?
Oh, they would. Yeah. If there's anything there to be grazed, they'll graze it.
Because that seems to be another thing that seems to be happening a little bit more now.
Yeah.
And they're a natural fertilizer system, I suppose, for the fields anyway.
Well, that's it. But even we'll say with the storms this year, during the harvest, there was a lot of oats in particular shed onto the ground, and that regrew. Even some of it was grown the day was 3 inches high the day we were harvesting.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've actually grazed all the oat ground since, because there was a nice cover of oats on it, and it's coming back again. So hopefully I'll get another graze on it in the spring before I.
And then I noticed across the yard here you have your cattle in.
Yeah.
Is that early for this end of the country? I just presume, coming from the west, that you have lot drier land.
Probably is a little bit for the country. The home farm here is actually quite heavy. Okay. It's not very dry. As I said, that we have sandy ground that's about 5 miles away, and that's complete opposite. All right, but here is quite heavy. So we normally have them in around the 1st November. So we're pretty much on schedule.
Yeah. And do you see if you can increase, we'll say, soil organic matter in your soils, do you see a benefit to you to maybe extending that out long term?
I would do.
Yeah.
I actually think if I was to go down the more mob grazing sort of route, where you'd be building a higher cover of grass ahead of yourself, that I could definitely see it extending it, especially with the smaller cattle.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But I'd be quite heavily stocked. I definitely don't think I'd be getting outwintered.
Yes, yeah.
You know.
That is the holy grail, I suppose, for many beef farmers, if we could.
Yeah. But even now, if you could get good cover crops in and, you know, extend the grazing a little bit and then go grazing cover crops, maybe you could keep out the heifers, or, you know, the breeding heifers or something like that. Be what I'd be hoping to do in the future, maybe. As hopefully the soil would improve as well now, and we carry that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's it. That is, because soil damage is the thing we have to avoid for at all costs.
Well, that's it. You know, as I said, here is not great. It's a very sort of, it's a very poor drainage in the subsoil, so it does tend to hold water. Okay. So I don't think that'll be changing anytime soon.
Okay. Well, and I suppose we look forward to you'll be online on the event to take any questions following on from this.
Yeah, no problem.
Great stuff. Thanks very much.
No, thank you. Bye.
Hello everyone, we're here as part of BioFarm 2020 on the farm of the Macaulay family farms in County Meath, and we're just going to have a chat with Louis about his journey starting off with conservation agriculture and his focus on more biological friendly farming and soil health initiatives. So Louis, if you can give us a brief introduction to the farm and where you've started off and come from.
Thanks, Robbie. Well, we're farming here in County Meath probably since the 50s. Our family moved here, started farming here. We initially was mainly grass-based industry. We were running a grass dryer with a little bit of tillage, and eventually over the years the grass faded out and we stopped doing it and we became just tillage. Over the years, the land here was always suiting to, you know, winter wheat, winter barley was mainly what we were growing here in a truly just conventional plough, till, sow, standard input kind of a system, and we'd been getting on very well over the years. You know, it probably from around the start of the 2000s, you know, yields and, you know, the look of crops and the visually looking at a crop and how healthy it was you know, we're starting to get a little bit disappointed. And, you know, as we looked back in it, we were probably getting further away from grass in our fields and just, you know, just a tired kind of a system with minimal, you know, organic matter or livestock integration going back in. So, you know, that was kind of in our back of our mind for a few years, and, you know, heading into mid-2000s, we dabbled a little bit with min-till, and, you know, just where we changed nothing else in our system, where we just, instead of ploughing, we cultivated stubbles at harvest and, you know, leave them to sit, and then went back in and sowed them. And look, we did that on a relatively small scale for a couple of years, and, you know, with some success and some disappointments, and eventually we stopped doing it and we went back to what we were doing. And then I suppose when we got to around 2011, 12, there was a bit of a surge in availability of different machines. You know, you had strip till was quite a big go, especially over in the UK, and there was a lot of manufacturers they'd come out with machines. And I suppose locally around us, a lot of people had, you know, took the leap and bought drills, and they were going down that route, and that kind of got us, we'll say, looking. And at that stage then we would have tried fields here and there, you know, on a small scale again, and seen how it went, and again with some success and some you know not so successful. And I suppose when we had kind of started looking at that, and at the same time the world of social media, you know, Twitter and YouTube, and farmers, you know, in the UK and France, and, you know, sharing what they were doing, and the ideas, you know, of how to improve your soils and how to farm in another way than plough, till, sow, those ideas moved much quicker and was a lot easier to learn stuff and find out. So I suppose with a bit of inspiration from that, and then I suppose through yourself, Robbie, and a couple of others, we started the group Base Ireland, and you know, when we started that, in terms of the group, I was probably at a juvenile stage of the conservation agriculture journey, where there was other lads that, you know, completely gone away from ploughing and were, you know, direct drilling for a number of years. So I suppose that was kind of what got us into the whole thing. And then, as I say, from there, and you know, thinking about the system a bit more, we stopped looking at, you know, direct drilling or strip tilling from a purely machinery point of view, and we started looking at from, well, you know, from the soil point of view. Apart from changing our machinery, what else do we need to do to implement the system on our farm to give us those soil improvements and you know, put a bit of life back into the land where we're sitting. So you know, around that time as well, cover crops became much more, you know, in vogue. We started growing a lot of cover crops, you know, outside of GLOS or any scheme, just purely for the benefits they were given. We started doing a lot of cover cropping, and we bought a strip till drill, and very soon after that we bought a no-till drill. And it was probably around 2015, 2016 is when we started going properly in this direction. So I suppose from that soil point of view, what we started to do then was, where we had been just purely continuous wheat and continuous barley, we started growing break crops again. You know, we'd grown a bit of oilseed rape over the years and some oats, but they were never a major part. So we started growing oilseed rape, beans and oats kind of as a mainstay, you know, probably putting a third, 40% of the farm in those crops over the year to give us those entries with our fresh ground, to get our high yielding wheats and barleys, you know, that we needed to keep the system going and to give us the benefits. So that's where that system got us into. And I suppose like it's completely a journey, what you say. And like the first thing what was quite stark to us in the initial stages was like, if we're looking back to 2007, 2008, 2012, all of those years, we had desperate trouble at harvest, travelling with the combines and trailers and balers. It was just, you know what I mean? We used to always say potato harvest was mucky and hard on land. Well, like those years, just trying to harvest wheat was like resemble a war zone sometimes, the feel. And you know, when you're at that the whole time, and I suppose everyone considers themselves a bit conscientious at soil and whatnot, like it was becoming very hard to look at. So as soon as we stopped ploughing in a field, like it wouldn't matter how wet the year was, the chances are if you were going into a direct drill field to harvest, you'd drive up and down and there wouldn't be a mark of it. And like that's one of those things that just gives you an awful, you know, boost of confidence to like, well, gee, there must be something, we're doing something right here. And then when you see, we would have went through then, we'll say, a phase of where, you know, a wet harvest, and while our ploughed fields, we dragged the combines through and damaged them. In our direct drill fields, we went across with the combine, no problem, and even were able to establish a crop again into them. Whereas our ploughed fields that had all the tracks in them, you know, you had nearly no other choice only to go back and plough them. So there was great learnings there. And you know, it was, you know, from my, you know, personally, and everybody that goes into this thing and they look at a no-till field or direct drill field, they'll see something different, and it's an amazing thing that way. Like, and you know, everyone has different preconceptions of what a good crop should look like. But for me, and I suppose I do a lot of the field work and the tramline work and whatnot, and you know, when you're driving up and down a field and you're not leaving any imprint in a field where you know you spent the last 5 or 10 springs, you know, any bit of wet condition at all, you'd be leaving tracks and, you know, not enjoying yourself at all. We bought our proper no-till drill 2016. We're kind of 5 years down the road now, and like there's been ups and downs, but well, 2019 autumn was very challenging. You know, we had plenty of failures and plenty of things we had to re-sow. You know, the harvest came along, and to be fair, you know, where we had invested properly in conservation agriculture with a bit of perseverance, the harvest reflected that. And where we were only a little bit down the line, you know, the land didn't take it as well. So look at, you know, there's one big learning from that, and you'd see it all the time is the harder you try and the more committed you are to the system, do more to reward you for it. So I suppose now we're at the stage now, 5 years in, where we have about 70% of our crops are in this system. I'd love to go 100%. There's reasons. I mean, you know, to get the cropping mix we need as a farm to spread our harvest and that, it can be challenged. We're working with different landowners and we've different arrangements in places, and so like it's actually lovely sitting here now in we'll say early days of November 2020. And we've had a really good establishment in autumn, and for us, like, that's, if we get a half decent establishment in the autumn in this system, you know, we know the crops are going to work the way, you know, they're going to perform, and we're going to be happy enough come harvest. You know, it's not always going to be bumper, but like, we have the crops in the ground, they're established very well, and you know, we probably have now 75% of our farm established this way, and you know, I see no reason going forward in another 5 years that we can't have the whole farm done that way. And it's just, I suppose it's just a matter of transition and you know, not putting ourselves too much at risk to different, you know, yield setbacks as we make the transition. But there's no reason in 5 years, I don't think, that we can't have the whole farm going that way.
Yeah, and Lou, it's I know some of the policymakers at EU level and Irish government are starting to look at, we'll say, the principles of conservation agriculture as a means to maybe helping with future environmental pressures and water quality and soil quality pressures. You know, what's your views on that, or what's your thoughts from what you've learned over the last few years? Oh,
well, I mean, for me, this, you know, conservation agriculture and the way, for example, we're managing the soil in this field, like there's exponential possibilities for us to deliver for the environment. And like, you know, this whole thing of environment, it's your community, it's you're upstream of something, you know, fish down the river, and we can start, we start in this field by not ploughing this field. You can see we're in the field here today in our shoes. You know what I mean? There's no muck. And like, we've had very heavy rain all week, and you know, this soil is intact. It's working as it should. Like, it's working like a proper soil would in a forest, or in, you know, in an old grassland field, where it's filtering. I've done this before, you know, where I've gone to outlets in fields, and the drains, like the water coming out of those drains in the fields under this management, the water's perfectly clean, and a field beside it under heavy tillage is coming brown, and you know, it's just not good. So, you know, definitely from water quality and erosion, and like, you know, it's no secret that soil is a precious resource. We're blessed in this part of the world that we have so much of it, and we're guilty of thinking it's going to last forever. But it's a fact, if you see a brown running stream, you know, that's soil, that's your nutrients, that's your organic matter, it's gone. And there's no filter at the end of the nanny to bring that back to you. So we have to be doing more and doing everything we can to keep that in the field. And this, for us, in this part of the world, and like, it's, you know, without having to do much, you know, without having to change how we're farming, what we're growing, you know, we're protecting, you know, our most important asset as farmers, our soil. We're keeping it alive, and we're keeping it in the field where it's supposed to be.
And I suppose, just to finish on that, how have you found being the base group, which seems to me a lot of farmers empowering other farmers and advising and helping,
it's fantastic.
Sharing stories?
Yeah, no, base has been like, you know, there's no way I couldn't see how it would have got to this point without having joining Base Ireland at the start, because, you know, within a month of speaking to people, and you know, your whole mindset of what you thought was possible. In 2000 I don't know, I think it was 2013, I was in a Classic Tractor magazine. They did an article on us, and I was quoted as saying, the only thing that will work on our farm is a plough and a one pass. And here we are. It's not 10 years since that, and we've, you know, it's completely changed. So that's how, like, the human mind is a great thing, but it's useless if you don't exercise it too. Like, so get into those groups and get, you know, it doesn't, like, someone could start another group similar to Base Ireland, but that sort of thinking, and you'll need, you know, you have your renegades and your leaders up the front, and you have lads coming behind, and next thing is the lad coming behind, you know, he was just sitting in the background for a couple of years and he's passed everyone out, and it's great. You know, absolutely Base Ireland has allowed, you know, has helped me learn so much and allowed us to farm like this. And you know, I'd encourage everyone to look in and talk to people that are in it and see, it won't be for everyone, but there's great, potential, compared to some other groups I've been in, Base Ireland and that type of group. It's all about farmers driving it on. You're not going and sitting down and being lectured to. Do you know what I mean? There's no rules. Nothing is ruled out. But you know what I mean? If you can do it, go and do it and tell the group, and then it's a thing. You know what I mean? It's just a fantastic way for farmers to push the boundaries of what's possible and what can at the end of the day, give them a margin, improve their margin, give them a better quality of life, and give them a better sense of enjoyment in their job. And like that's, there's so much farming is negative, and people not enjoying what they're doing, and people coming down on them from one side or the other. But to turn it around, get together with a group of positive-minded, people that think the same way, and then to turn around and then, have your farm, delivering benefits for the greater community. Like it's incredible.
Lovely. Well, thanks a million for sharing all that with us, Louis. And as I said, thanks to the McGauley family for allowing us on the farm. You must have been only 7 when they interviewed you for the Classic Tractor magazine.
Louis McCauley and Richard Fortune, and Richard and Louis are joining us now. Hopefully we can connect up to them. We've been getting lots of questions from you. Hashtag BioFarm 2020, or put it in the Q&A in your screen there and get the questions in for Louis and Richard, and also the base group. There they are. Louis, Richard, how are you? Can you hear us?
Hey Ella, how are you?
We don't.
Can we hear them?
Yes, they can.
You can hear us well?
Yes, no problem.
Fantastic. Louis, brilliant. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. We've got about 15 minutes. We've got an awful lot of questions for you, so I'm going to crack straight into them. Philip asks, do you spread much lime? Louis?
Yeah, well, we do soil tests, I suppose, on a 5-year basis and treat accordingly, based on whether, look at the soil type we're on and whether it needs calcium lime or magnesium lime, and kind of treat accordingly. So that's kind of normal part of what we're doing. Yeah.
Richard.
We'd be on very high magnesium ground here now, so I would spread a lot of calcium lime in the last few years, especially since I started doing some all-back tests and showing that I had the high magnesium levels. Like magnesium is keeping the pH up, so I'm spreading the lime based on more that I need the calcium than I need the pH rise.
Yes. Another question, do you incorporate much of the straw from Harold? Louis?
Well, where we are, there's a lot of livestock around us, so there is very good, markets and demand for straw. But what we tend to do is, in a kind of an 8-year rotation, we'd kind of tend to chop all of our break crops, so maybe our oats, our beans, and our oilseed rape. So we'd have 3 crops out of 8, maybe, roughly speaking, would be going back into the soil as a chopped straw kind of thing.
And that's enough for you?
Sorry?
That's enough for you?
Yeah, well, look, if there wasn't a market for straw, we would definitely put it back. But I suppose things come down to economics too, and in ways, while straw can be good for soil health, it can also affect the next crop coming along. And if we want to sow a small seed like our mustard cover crops or oilseed rape and stuff like that, it can often be beneficial to get the straw moved off. And then leave it kind of it's less intimidating for the small seeds coming along. And then see what we would do then is we'd have a kind of number of farmers where we would sell straw to, and then we'd get kind of back as dung or farmer manure, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We get it back in a kind of an enhanced form, and then with our own cattle as well, we'd be bringing stuff back as well. So that's kind of how we'd operate.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Richard, yourself?
No, we've only grown about 50 acres odd, so we use all our own straw for ourselves. But they all gone back onto the same ground.
Question here, sorry, it's anonymous. Sorry for the blunt question. Are you making more or less money now? Louis?
Well, we kind of run, every year we have a bit in every system, in both systems side by side. And, every year we analyze, we look at every field as an individual, and, every cost, every machinery pass we allocate, very accurately. And, 9 times out, generally speaking, they run kind of similarly. And, there's no reason why at this point we're not saying 5 years in, oh God, we're losing money by doing this. It's definitely, when we look at the figures, they're kind of reassuring and, backing up what we're seeing in the fields, that it is the right way to be going. So, it's hard to sit here and put a figure on a money, because farming is not a 1 year thing. It's not a 5 year thing. So, but generally speaking, economically, we would be very happy with how this system is performing.
Yeah, I mean, you said in that video, we're protecting our most important asset. So presumably for you, as you say, this is a much more of a longer thing for you than just year on year.
Absolutely. I want, another generation to be able to come onto this farm and not start, giving out and saying, what were these lads at here before? You know what I mean? What am I going to do now? The thing I'd like year on year to be moving things forward, or not stagnating or going backwards. So whatever, you can't. It's very hard to put that into a margin figure on a 1 year basis. It really needs to step back and look at how your farm is performing as a trend, and how resilient it is over a longer period. So that's what I'd be looking at.
And Richard, I suppose, that question is completely fair enough. The blunt question, are you making more or less money? And I suppose it is a fundamental question about whether putting life back on the land is profitable or not. But I suppose at the end of the day, as Louis was saying, you can't necessarily measure that in the short term.
No. Well, year on year, I'd say we're definitely doing better. And would have reduced input costs a good bit. Very little, if any, output reduction. As Louis was saying, I definitely agree with Louis on it's a long-term game. There's no point in mining your farm and having nothing there to hand on. No, I definitely agree with that. As I said, but not everything comes down to profit either. It's about being happy with what you're doing, with the environment, enhancing the environment you're living in. A lot of it comes down to what Alan Savory was saying yesterday. It's about setting your holistic context, and that's not just about making money. That's about having a clean environment, a future for everybody.
Louis, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I know it's always a burning question about economics, and if you want to look at it this way, if we were, really happy with how we were going economically and profit wise 10 years ago, we wouldn't have started looking at an alternative way of doing things. So that's kind of, that's a message enough into say how thing was going. So, if you want examples, well, as I say, we're always running a bit of both systems every year, and for one reason or another, the last few years, our highest wheat yields have always come from our conservation agriculture fields, and certainly our highest net margin figures on an individual field basis have always come from our conservation agriculture fields. Now you look at, there's not enough time to look at the whole farm and say financially, but generally as a general thing, it's definitely going in the right direction, and I wouldn't it wouldn't be economics at the minute that would hold me back from pursuing this further.
Louis, you got a question here from Lauren. The no-till drill doesn't seem to be so common in Ireland. Are they much more expensive when compared to traditional till?
Not particularly, no. I suppose, compared, no, they're not where a no-till drill has a bit more technology in each of the coulters, and there's a bit more engineering that way. Generally speaking, your traditional one pass would have some sort of a cultivation equipment out in front of it. So, you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of things. You can spend a lot of money or you can spend a little bit of money, and all you're doing at the end of the day is placing a seed into the ground. So, there's depending on how you're farming, what your soil type is, how many acres you have to do, how good you are with a welder, there's, you know, a world of different possibilities for how you can get into this system. And it doesn't have to be, you know, you can spend money, a lot of money or a little bit of money. And at the end of the day, it'll be the weather and how you manage your soil. It'll dictate how good the thing performs for you.
Yeah, Richard, you're nodding there.
Oh, absolutely agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the drill is only a tool. It's the system that's the most important thing.
And Richard, we've had another question in. How do you find your relationship developing with adjacent farmers where you're farming? What do they think?
As I said, I've often got a few strange looks over the ditch, I suppose. But in general, look, people are very open to doing things differently, I find. They mightn't take the risk, but they can understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. But more and more people I meet now are coming around to looking at soil and things like that. And, you know, even Sunday morning, I had a man down to buy a bull. And we were walking back to the car, and we got into a conversation about soil, and he had read some of the books I'd read, and he was after watching things on mob grazing, and, you know, so it's definitely becoming more and more common.
Yeah, so it's not so strange. Louis, what about yourself with adjacent farmers? I mean, obviously you're such a big player. Presumably you moving in this direction in the last while has been quite influential.
Well, look, you know, generally, like, as you meet people around locally, people are always interested in something new, and they want to, you know, generally speaking, they want to try and understand what you're doing. And, you know, I'm not saying everyone wants to go and do what we're doing, and they're all, you know, there'll be a lot of people cautiously looking on and see how it's going, but generally, you know, there would be an interest in it. And, you know, over the years, we've done bits and pieces for people here and there, and there's been a couple of people have actually gone on and bought their own drills on the strength of seeing what we were doing and looking around. And, you know, look, I suppose, you know, it's not, there's nobody laughing at us in our face. I don't know what they're saying behind our backs, but that's always the way. I mean, you know, I think it's one of the prerequisites of being a farmer is you have to spend your day driving around looking out into everybody else's field and passing remarks and judgments, whether it be it to yourself or to a bit more publicly. But that's just what the way it is. It's
and
good, you know what I mean?
You know, you said one interesting thing in the video there. You were talking about how, I mean, social media, but also looking at what farmers in the UK and France were doing, and that the ideas were coming at you much quicker. And I just wonder, do you think there are enough ideas coming out of Ireland? I mean, obviously, Base Ireland coming together, part of that is supporting each other with those ideas. But do you think we need to come up with more ideas and, you know, look at kind of inspiring farmers more?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, you know, the farmer will have the ideas and the farmer will play around. But I suppose when you're farming and you know what I mean, you have deadlines to meet and you have to get crops in. You can have an odd idea, but there's only so much you can do as a as an individual. Like, there is a massive scope, I think, for, so, you know, in research and in our education institutions to look into more detail what we're actually doing. I suppose, like, the ideas and the rough idea of what to do, that's fine. You know, with the farmers, there's enough of that going on. I think we could do it a little bit more in-depth analysis of what we're doing and why it is actually good, and what, you know, to get bit more quantification of.
So a bit of scientific research to be funded in order to back it up, do you mean?
Yeah, I think so, because, you know what I mean, I suppose you get to a stage, me and I suppose similar people like me, you know, eventually you see something works and you know it's good, and after that you're not really bothered, so you don't, you know, you're not going to, you know, look into it anymore or start to try and get in-depth figures on it. It just becomes second nature to you. But at the end of the day, it's still something that should probably be promoted and you know, researched in more detail, as to what the tangible benefits of it could be. So, Richard,
what do you think?
Yes, I suppose definitely I'd agree with Louis there. You know, it's you can see it works on your farm, but, you know, if for somebody looking in, you know, they need a bit of independent verification on, you know, if they can see that whoever has done the research and the figures stack up, then it's they have more confidence in going to adopt the system.
Yes, yeah. We've had a question in from a viewer called Nick, who asks you both, some no-till methods use a lot of herbicides. Do you avoid them? Louis?
No, we don't say avoid them as such. No, I mean they're a key part in our system. We in our system we're prioritizing the soil as a living system, and what we want to farm it with the minimum impact on it possible. So how you'll see in the picture behind me, we created that nice cover crop in it and create a nice environment for our next crop to come in to follow on after. And I suppose, a herbicide just to kill that cover crop off and allow the next crop of wheat to come on is essential for that system, really. And it's part, like all good ideas and good holistic approaches, they all have little key features and little elements of technology. And herbicides are just another tool in our armory which allow us, without herbicides, we'd have to go back and completely till up and chop up the whole soil to clean it up for the next crop. And, for me, that'd be too much of a backward step, and I wouldn't want to go that way. And you, Richard?
Yeah, look, it's the same as Louis. If you need to no-till, if you want to no-till, you're going to have to use some sort of herbicide to get rid of what's there. But, it's part of the compromise. It's either you get rid of it with a plough or a cultivator, or you get rid of it with a herbicide. They're both disturbances. It's about seeing which one is, or judging which one is the most appropriate at the most appropriate time.
Yeah.
For me, like I do the same thing. I will plough if I have to.
Yeah.
If I think that's the right decision for that field at that time. But it's the same thing. I'll no-till if I think that's the right decision, then spray it off.
You're adaptable to the conditions you're facing. Yeah.
Exactly, you adapt to that. I'm not dogmatic anyway.
Thanks. We've got a minute or so left. Sean has a few questions for you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We're inundated, so I have 3 more I want to run very quickly. The first one I'm going to start with is, in terms of, and maybe this is more for Louis, because I know, Richard, that you're doing you're growing your grain for finishing your beef, but I suppose we have 3 traditional types of crops, I suppose, wheat, barley and oats in Ireland. Do you see transition to other crops? There's a rise of veganism, more plant-based diets, the whole grains sector. Do you see opportunities in Ireland for farmers to grow more crops in that area?
Yeah, definitely. There are some opportunities, I suppose. Where we are in the scale in our thing is, we don't want to be trying to change our cultivation system and also try and grow a load of niche crops and try to be doing too much. So, from stability thing, we're just focusing on, I suppose, they are what they are, commodities, and it would be nice to move to to move on to more food grade crops. And again, it's our climate. It's borderline enough what we're doing in the crops we're growing at the minute. So to be pushing it on further, while it would be nice, the rewards would have to be there for price and whatnot to mitigate the risks, I suppose. Okay.
Richard, I have a question I wanted to ask you. Because you're a beef cereal system, your farmyard manure, do you compost it, or is it going back out as farmyard manure, or is that something you'd like to change?
I haven't done any composting on it yet. Again, it's something that's I'm interested in and learning about, and probably the likes of the bokashi part of the system with with inoculation and more fermented type of thing. I'm probably going to try that now first before I try turning or aerobic composting. I would have made a small amount of aerobic compost last year just to try it out for the garden more than anything.
Okay, we have a man coming on this evening that you might be interested in as well, because Bruno is one of the leading experts on composting. And my last question before I go, you all both referenced base, and first of all, base isn't just, as far as I understand it, cereals only. There's quite a lot of mixed farmers. If farmers wanted to join base, what's the easiest way to do it?
I suppose, well, if you want to start and find out a bit more, we have a very good Twitter account, and we kind of keep, keep regular updates of what's going on across all the farms. And we also have our email address is baseireland@gmail.com, and send an email onto that for any information you want. And we have someone there, we have a dedicated committee member, and they kind of deal with all new inquiries. And again, most of our members are on Twitter, in some degree, either anonymously or not. But generally speaking, if there's a director working into a big field of cover crop somewhere in Ireland, there'll be someone tweeting like crazy about it. So, yeah.
And I just wonder, Louis, like how important, sort of an obvious question, but how important is it for you to have that grouping, the farmers around you, and you're all kind of aiming towards the same thing for support and kind of skills and information exchange and all the rest?
It's fantastic. It has completely changed the farming world. Without, say, Base Ireland or whatever, your group, your friends, your peers, it just has opened up a complete new, range of ideas and opinions and different personalities and people from places like Cork, and you know what I mean. It's a fantastic. It really has been a fantastic way to meet people around the country, and it's not everybody in base doesn't. I can guarantee they do not have the same ideas or the same opinions, but it's that mix and that discussion. It's fantastic, and it really brings the best out in everyone.
Richard, it's good that people don't have the same opinions, isn't it? That's what life is about. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's you learn more from people you disagree with than the people you do agree with in a way. But absolutely, I love base now. I suppose 3 or 4 years now, and it's a great support, and it's a great way of, if you have a question, if you're thinking of trying something, there's probably somebody has done it before and has advice to give you, or even if it's a new idea, you have people to bounce ideas off and get their input to see if it's good or it's bad, or it's definitely, and I've made great friends through it.
It's fantastic. Well, listen, Richard Fortune there in Wexford and Louis Macaulay in Meath, thank you both so much for your time this afternoon and sharing your experiences. It's really appreciated here, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions coming through, but people can be directed to the Base Ireland Twitter account and email address and all the rest. We'll put it up.